You don't always need more awareness of your patterns and your beliefs and your self-concept. Often you just need to know what to do with the awareness that you have. Hello, my loves! Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support you in bridging the gap between who you currently are or perceive yourself as and who you desire to be or become. Today's video is all about awareness, when it's important, when you need it, how you should use it, and when maybe more awareness doesn't actually help you, but instead keeps you stuck. So let's talk about when and how awareness is actually important, because in the self-development world, there tend to be two different approaches. Either spiritual bypassing, so those are the people that are love and light, that don't want to go into the darkness, that don't want to look at the stuff that's maybe going on in your psyche, that want to pretend that everything is fine when it's not, that want to ignore circumstances. And that's a really harmful approach, and I have a whole different video on that, which I'm going to link above my head. But then the second approach goes down more the psychological path, but it can lead to digging and doing more and more and more, because it's a never-ending process if you want it to be. So you're attempting to gain more and more awareness. And awareness is important. If you're not aware, for example, that there's something that you'd like to change about your self-concept, or maybe a relationship with yourself, or the things that you desire in your life, your external circumstances, and the way you'd like to feel and move. If you don't have awareness of that, then how are you ever going to change anything? How are you ever going to take the necessary steps to make it happen? Similarly, if you want to change a belief, you need to know what that belief is, and you need to know where you want to go. You need that clarity, you need that awareness. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. You can't really change something that you have zero awareness of. But what happens a lot is that that's where people stop, and ultimately then keep themselves trapped in a cycle of gaining more and more awareness, or going back and forth between the realizations that they have, but nothing is actually changing or shifting. If you recognize yourself in that, if you consider yourself as somebody who is very self-aware, if you enjoy learning about yourself, which honestly probably most people watching this video will fall into this category, because otherwise you're not going to consume content like this. The problem with getting stuck at the awareness level is that it can give you the illusion of making progress, because every time you have a light bulb moment, you have a big realization, you feel like you're taking a step forward. And whilst in some ways that is you getting that clarity, you probably then still revert back to your old patterns, although you have that awareness, because there's a big difference between actually integrating that awareness and doing something with it and making the changes in your life and in your self-concept, and just knowing what's going on and where things come from. For example, I've done a lot of free events over the years, which I love facilitating, and I get really great feedback on every time, because people have these light bulb moments, these big realizations about how they've been operating. And that's exactly my intention, right? To give you this empowerment, this sense of I can change things. I can change how I show up. I can change my self-concept. That is possible for me. But that's not where the transformation happens. That's the initiation. That can be the catalyst for you to actually begin to make a change. That's just the awareness piece. The true transformation happens through a long-term process of integration, of embodiment, and it's more in-depth work. You don't change your self-concept by listening to YouTube videos, watching master classes. You need to do really deep work in order to transform your self-concept. And that's why there is a really big difference between people having light bulb moments in a master class and the transformation that, for example, is possible in my coaching program, Recreate Yourself. And you know where else I see a similar thing happen? In the therapeutic world. I've met people who have been in therapy for at least a decade and who are still falling into the same patterns. And I've even seen this in my clients. I've had multiple clients in Recreate Yourself who have been in therapy or are still in therapy whilst going through the program, and it can actually be very complementary anyways. But whilst they come to me with all this self-awareness and they know their attachment style and they know where in their childhood something originated, or sometimes they put labels on themselves because they've learned in therapy that they are maybe a bit codependent, whatever it is, they have so much awareness, but they talk about the same things over and over and over again, and it's not actually changing. And I find that therapy can sometimes do that, especially traditional talk therapy. Not that there is anything wrong with that. I think it's very powerful, and I think everybody should be in therapy on some level, or have had some sort of professional support, which can be therapy or coaching. And there's a place for it where coaching, in my opinion, isn't that productive, and therapy is more useful depending on where on your journey you're at. But I see it a lot in people who only do therapy, that they talk about the same problems over and over again. And they talk about the same patterns over and over again, but nothing in their life is changing. They're still showing up the same way. They still have the same behaviors. They still have the same perception of themselves. And that's not how it should be. That's not where it should end. The other thing about awareness is also that you can never be fully self-aware. And people tend to think they're more self-aware than they actually are. Which I've been there too, and probably now I think I'm more self-aware than I actually am, because there's always more to learn. But you can never be fully self-aware, because that would mean knowing all the intricacies of your subconscious. And it's called subconscious for a reason. It's not conscious, and it's really hard work to make it conscious. When I work with people, they're always surprised at how much stuff still comes up in their psyche, into their consciousness, that they weren't even aware was present. And those are people who thought they were really, really self-aware, and they probably were. You're probably really self-aware, more self-aware than the average person at the very least. But if you're staying there, if you're staying just at the awareness level, what's going to happen is that you keep digging and digging and digging and never actually making a difference. And as I said, that happens to me too. When I work with one of my coaches or mentors, I constantly realize things and come up against things that I didn't even know were present in my consciousness. And if it's things that are deeply in the subconscious, from maybe infancy or birth, or even before that in the womb, or things that are so deeply suppressed because they've been very traumatic experiences, that is something that is hidden. That is something that is deeply in your psyche, that is in your shadow sometimes, that's in your subconscious, and that will take a lot of time, will take a deep connection to your body to gain awareness of. If you're curious about my approach, by the way, you can find a free blueprint linked below. It's my free self-concept mastery blueprint. It includes a daily checklist, and it really breaks down all the elements that go into transforming your self-concept in a very in-depth process, because just talking about it or changing your mindset isn't going to lead to the long-term changes you wish to see. But let's talk about the 3 things that you do need to transform your self-concept. This is like a top-level overview. Awareness is one of them. And when I speak about awareness, I mean having clarity on your state, on your beliefs, at least the most present, alive, dominant ones. We can't know everything that's going on, right? And we don't need to. We don't need to be aware of everything. We can even get some awareness of where patterns come from. Sometimes it's useful to know this thing happened in my childhood and this is why this belief developed. It's not necessary, but it's useful. I did a video on this recently also, which I'm gonna link. I never know which direction to point above my head. But what comes after the awareness? Integration. And integration is a natural step towards embodiment. Embodiment isn't just practicing a feeling. I see people simplify the concept of embodiment all the time. It's not just feeling into something and practicing a feeling, it's becoming. And you can embody a state or an archetype briefly, but when it comes to embodying a different self-concept, that is something that should be sustained, that is deeply integrated in your being, that you don't go back and forth from. Now, I've already hinted at it. Sustaining it happens through integration. And the process I teach is very integrated, somatically and emotionally. It takes everything into consideration. What happens is that everything gets to subtly click into place through this deliberate method over time, which automatically, gradually, but automatically leads to a new embodiment, a new identity, a new self-concept, a sustained state. It's then not something that you have to try and that feels really foreign to you. It's not something that you revert back from again and again. It's then something that lasts and that happened naturally without you having to try and embody something. So that's integration. And the third one is the embodiment. And that's so important because it's about becoming, being, not just thinking. It's great to change your mindset, but you can have a great mindset and still take shitty actions or show up in a way that doesn't align with the mindset that you think you have. If we look at the definition of embodiment, it's a tangible or visible form of an idea or a feeling or a quality. The key words here are tangible and visible. And I would say it's also felt and energetic. When you have embodied a different self-concept, it's not just something that is in your head anymore. It's who you have become. That is palpable. That is visible. That's when people ask you, "You're glowing. What has happened?" And I get this regularly from friends, from past clients, from people in my audience, just through the transformation that I have undergone. This is not me trying anything. But if you look back, actually don't look back because I'm cringing hard at it, but if you looked back at my old videos, you can see the change in me. You can see the transformation. You can see that I have embodied a different identity, a different self-concept. And that is not something that I had to try and do. That is not something that I ever had to pretend or fake. That is who I have become. And you can feel that. You can feel when it's embodied. You can feel when it is who someone is being versus when they are trying really hard to be something that they're not. I would love to know from you, what's your biggest challenge in moving from awareness to embodiment? In next week's video, we're gonna dive into shadow work, and I'm gonna tell you all about why shadow work and shadow integration are absolutely necessary for you to change your self-concept. I'll see you then. Have a wonderful week.